You're planning on relocating to the state of Florida. You're trying to figure out where should I move myself and my family to in this great state where everybody wants to move to currently. Well, in this video, I'm going to separate the state into a few distinct areas to help you understand the differences between all of the areas of Florida and what might be a best fit for you, a local native Floridian, and let you know what I feel like each area has to offer and what it's actually like living in these areas. So we're going to break these sections into three unique groups. We're going to have the Panhandle of Florida, we're going to have the West Coast of Florida, and we're going to have the East Coast of Florida. Now, if you're thinking like, well, all these coasts, where's Central Florida? Well, Central Florida is sinkhole capital of the world. If you didn't know that, look it up right here. Central Florida has its own unique vibes, and if you're looking to relocate to Florida and you're thinking about those beach areas, the tropical environments, or palm trees, Central Florida is usually not what you're thinking of. If you want affordable housing, if you want to be in the middle of a rural environment, if you like lakes and not oceans, if you love Disney World, Orlando, Kissimmee, Florida, Lakeland, Florida, these might be places for you. However, Central Florida is not what most people are thinking about when they're planning on relocating to the state of Florida. So we're going to break up into those three groups as I mentioned before. We're going to have the Panhandle, we're going to have the West Coast, that includes the Gulf Coast, and we're going to have the east side of Florida as well. Popular areas in the Panhandle of Florida are going to be the city areas of, say, Pensacola, Destin, and Panama City Beach. These are the three most popular areas in the Panhandle. Pensacola will give you a nice historic downtown vibe. You can be in a walkable areas. Definitely look into flood zones there. Look into the history of the city. If you don't like ghosts, there's some ghosts and a lighthouse that's very famous in Pensacola. But if you're looking for an actual city type of vibe with diversity, great types of food, you can definitely get that in Pensacola, Florida. Now, if you're looking at, say, Destin, that'll give you a great beach town vibe, a very uppity class area. The world's luckiest fishing village is historically there. You have nice white sugar sand beaches that you have in Pensacola as well, but Destin beaches tend to be nicer, less spring breaker-ish, and a little bit more upscaled. Now, if you want, that raunchy spring break vibe, this is why we have Panama City Beach. It is a very interesting area. It's great for young college kids. If you're a young working professional with a family, may not be the best area for you. You might want to look a little bit more into it. That area did get hit recently with a Category 5 hurricane that kind of blew everything one direction than the other. But overall, those are going to be your three major cities or areas that you're looking into in the Panhandle of Florida. You might be thinking about Tallahassee, the state capital. Now, that's kind of gets thrown around kind of in that awkward Central Florida area. There's no real beach. It is the capital. It's very different than the rest of the Panhandle, and it doesn't quite fit in with other areas as well. It's just the capital area. If you're interested in moving to Tallahassee, you can definitely find other videos. It's not a place where most people who watch my type of content will want to move to. The West Coast cities are going to be the ones right there on the Gulf Coast. So you probably already know you have Tampa, Sarasota, Fort Myers, and Naples. Those are four distinct areas that will give you very, very different types of vibes. Tampa will give you a lot more of an urban style environment. A lot of wooden built houses are still present there that, may be questionable, that we're going to talk about later. Do you want to be in a wooden house in a hurricane prone state? That's a great question right there. But it gives you a lot of interesting things to do, a very large urban environment with a lot of suburbia surrounding it currently. You have Sarasota that's developing to like a little old Miami, a very nice cultural area. Sarasota is probably one of my most favorite cities in the entire state of Florida, so I'm partially biased. It has some of the best beaches that are completely free to park in. You have Fort Myers. It's usually a retirement type area. The people live there. You can definitely see some nice beaches, do some things. It's a much larger developed area in Southwest Florida. Now, once you get Sarasota down, it does get a lot more tropical. That's for sure. Tampa is not tropical. It's more like Central Florida than South Florida. Take that in the back of your mind. Even though the University of South Florida is located there, it was named, unfortunately, because people thought they would never be able to survive and live down here in South South Florida. So that was going to be the most southern university in the entire state of Florida. And now we have University of Miami and all these other universities everywhere. So disregard that name of that university. It's poorly named, unfortunately. Now, the East Coast has tons and tons of popular city areas. I'm not going to name them all. I'm going to name some of the popular ones. So we have Jacksonville, the largest city by land area in the entire country. And over there, if you need help find a real estate agent, that Jacksonville is so large and so different in all its little areas. You definitely want to make sure you're working with somebody who knows that area well. Reach out to me. I know some great real estate agents there in Jacksonville and actually at all these cities. So if you need help relocating to any of these areas, reach out to me below. I can set you on, get to talk to you a little bit on a Zoom call, figure out what you're looking for, because I have different types of agents in mind when I'm working with different types of people versus like families versus young people. But I do know a lot of good people in these areas that I'm talking about. So reach out to me if you would like to be referred to a great real estate agent who can help you relocate to these cities, okay? Then right below Jacksonville, we have St. Augustine. St. Augustine is again another historic city. A lot of ghosts. If you don't like ghosts, don't move to St. Augustine. Unfortunately, it has a lot of historic areas, a lot of ghost myths there, a lot of legends of what happened in the area. On paper, it's the oldest city in the entire country. Now, unofficially, Pensacola is. It was the first settlement, but it was destroyed by a large impact of a hurricane. You're going to notice this throughout history that Florida gets hit by hurricanes and people just get out of there. So, unfortunately, right now, St. Augustine is declared as the oldest city in America, even though it was not the oldest city in America. Skipping down most of the coast, most of that is great if you're retired, if you're looking for a small town, some things that you can get in between St. Augustine. But the next city we're going to talk about is Port St. Lucie. Port St. Lucie is like the first kind of city environment area that you'll get in tropical Florida. So if you're thinking about palm trees, coconut trees, beautiful weather, not as hot during the summer, but way more humid than other parts of Florida, definitely feels a lot better than Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. Way different weather. South Florida is the way to go. In my opinion, you could move anywhere you want to, but in my opinion, Port St. Lucie is going to be the closest you'll get to tropical style weather in Florida. And it's going to be the most affordable place kind of to do that if you want a suburban area with like, some slight shopping, you got your Publix, your little things that you probably want to do if you're moving to a South Florida environment with a family. This will be the first city that you'll get. Right below there is going to be West Palm Beach. West Palm is not to be confused with Palm Beach. Palm Beach is for the ultra billionaires. West Palm was mainly used for the working class people who served those billionaires a long time ago. Now West Palm is becoming its own city. It's becoming developed quite well now, but it's a very urban type environment. A lot of diversity there, and that's something that's great. Once you get part of this part of Florida, this entire Miami metropolitan area that goes from Miami up to West Palm area, this is going to be a very well-connected area, very diverse. A lot of different types of people live in this area, so diversity and food types are important to you. This is going to be your first city you might want to look into. Moving on down, we have Delray Beach. It's a very up-and-coming area. It's great for younger people. If you're looking to, if you're single, you want to get out, you want to have things to do, nice clubs, nice restaurants, walkable downtown. East Delray around Atlantic Boulevard, right there in the heart of the city. It's probably what you're looking for. And my beautiful area here in Boca Raton, if you're looking for luxurious style living, a well thought of planned city, you have your own fire department, you have your own police department, everything's well secure. I feel safe walking around. Boca Raton is the way to do if you're looking for that type of lifestyle. Very tropical, very nice, very unique in the entire South Florida area. Now that's moving out of Palm Beach County. Next is going to be Fort Lauderdale and Broward County. So if, again, you're looking for a very affluent area, if you have a yacht, if you want waterfront living, and you want a lot more of an urban environment, Fort Lauderdale is a great city to consider. Now, if you're looking for a very unique place in America, if you're looking for a city that's completely different than anything else I've mentioned, very different than anywhere else you probably ever live in the country, Miami is the city to go to. Miami is very unique. It's probably the only majority, where Spanish is probably way more commonly spoken than English. It is a very very unique area. It's a very beautiful area. It's the most tropical part of Florida. The ground is different. It's very rock, it's very solid. People there use terms like king tide, flooding a lot more readily than other parts of Florida. It's a very unique area. Everything about Miami is very unique, very different. If you're a young person looking for fun, looking to find your likes and dislikes, Miami might be the place for you. It's a very different area compared to the rest of South Florida. When you're thinking about Miami, don't think about that being in Boca Raton. Don't think about Miami being in West Palm. Don't think about Miami being anywhere else besides Miami. Miami is Miami. Miami, it is the investment capital of Latin America. House values there are very expensive. The way money works there is very different than other places as well. It's a very unique area. It has a lot of connections to South Florida. Now, other parts of Palm Beach County, Broward County, they have a lot more connection too. But the degree of the connection to Latin America to Miami is so present to this day. And the amount of capital flight from Latin America into this South Florida, Miami metropolitan area is getting greater and greater every single year. So if you're a type of person, you're like, hey, I want to go learn Spanish. I want to go have fun. I want to go have a unique experience. Miami is the place to do this at. Now we're going to talk about beaches. So one thing the Panhandle of Florida has, it's the best beaches during the summertime, probably in the entire state of Florida. Why? The sand's completely white. The beach area gets cold during actual night. So if you want a place that's cool, not too hot, you don't want to burn your feet on the hot sand. If you live in Miami during summertime, you go to the beach, you might be burning your actual feet on the sand because the sand gets hot. It's darker. The sun's very strong down there. So the Panhandle of Florida has some of the best beaches in the world. Over and over again, they get rated very highly. Grayton Beach, Pensacola Beach, Destin Beach, Navarre Beach, some of the best white sands in the entire area. And another plus is that they're not overdeveloped. So you're getting a nice beach area that's not developed, full of condos and out-of-state investors. This area is not developed yet in the entire state of Florida. So if you're moving, say, to Pensacola or Destin, you're going to be one of the more of the first investors rather than the people that come in and have to be forced into a condo situation. You probably don't want to buy a condo in Florida. There's a lot of things to look into before you buy a condo, but you don't have to do that, say, on Pensacola Beach, where there's a lot of houses, single-family houses still very close to the water on stilts that you can still buy to this day. And again, free parking is very common in the Panhandle for the beaches. Not so common in other parts of Florida that we're going to get to. Now, the downside, there was a BP oil spill. I got to see it firsthand. I lived over there during the BP oil spill, and there was this, they put these surfactants or whatever they call them in the water. It just made the oil kind of go to the bottom of the ocean every time there's a major storm. Some can be washed up on shore, and BP still pays people to go out there and pick up oil, residue, tar, whatever they call it. It can be something that could be not so great. I'm always out of fear that there might be another oil spill in the Gulf Coast, and it's something you just have to live with. Panhandle of Florida, it can get red tide, but not as bad as Southwest Florida on the West Coast. So it is something to think about beach style living. It is way, way cheaper than any other beach style living in the entire state of Florida. Then we have the Gulf Coast West Side beaches, and these beaches, while they are amazing, you can definitely get white sand here, you can get brown sand, you can get seashells by the seashore. You can get a lot of different styles of living on the West Coast. Now, lifestyle's way different on these beach coasts, okay? These beach coasts. So this beach coast here on the west side, the beach is not consistent as is kind of in the Panhandle and the east coast of Florida. So above Tampa, you really don't get anything, and you got to go below Tampa to get beaches. And parking is usually free. The sand, the barriers tend to be off and on, like how wide the beach is. Some are absolutely beautiful. Siesta Keys always ranked as one of the best beaches in the world. A lot of free parking there, a big, thick beach. You do get some major cities like St. Pete, Clearwater. They have a lot more development here on these beaches here than, say, the Panhandle, but not as bad as, say, Hollywood, Florida on the East Coast. So something you may have to, give or take with the beach area. Now, if there is something you have to watch out for, it is the red tide. The Southwest Florida has some of the worst red tide in the entire state. So it's not uncommon, say, every other year to have this red tide event come into the water. It makes the water like this red color, and you will smell it. You get out of your car, if you don't know yet, you get out of your car, you'll smell something's wrong. You don't know what it is because you have never experienced it, but you go out there, there's gonna be tons of dead fish everywhere, and you're gonna be like, what is going on? Well, that is red tide. It can trigger COPD, it can trigger asthma. It's not the best thing for you, so something to be aware. Now, this coast of Florida can be semi-seasonal. You're gonna get a sudden influx of people during winter, but not as bad as the east coast of Florida. The North Panhandle of Florida gets almost no seasonal difference because people go down there during the summer for the beaches and they don't really come down for the winter because it's too cold. It gets cold up there, so people don't go up there during winter. You don't have snowbirds in North Florida commonly. Now, the east coast of Florida, you're going to get these beaches that can be beautiful or absolutely ugly. The ugliest beach that I've been on in a while has been Jacksonville Beach. I hated it. The sand's hard. You can run on it. It's not something that I enjoyed. The sand gets hot. It was not a pleasurable environment for a beach town. It's probably one of the worst beaches in the state of Florida. There's some other ones that are also bad, but for a major city that's supposed to put a lot of development to the beach area, I found the Jacksonville Beach to be very lacking. It is way more seasonal on the east coast than it is on the west coast, so be aware of that. What I mean by seasonal, that you'll have people from Canada, Russia, all these different northeast places, New York, New Jersey. They'll come down during the winter time and the population will just out of nowhere. We get super busy here on the east coast, especially when you get down further below West Palm Beach. Our population here in Boca, Miami, Fort Lauderdale grows greatly, and unfortunately the waiting at restaurants, the waiting to just go over a bridge, the waiting anywhere can be much larger than you're used to. Now, I'm very fortunate. I live in Boca. We don't get much traffic. It's not as seasonal as other places, and the roads here are very wide. But places like Fort Lauderdale, your wait can go from like a 15-minute wait during the summer all the way to 45 minutes to an hour at the same restaurant at the same time due to the sudden increase of population from the snowbirds. It's very common on this east coast as well that you'll pay by hour or you're paid to park in these parking lots. That's not very common on these other parts. Now, while the sand itself can be anywhere from like brown, dark gray, a little bit off-white, it's not consistent at all through the entire east coast. You don't have that beautiful white sand pretty much anywhere on the east coast. But one thing that we benefit from is the Gulf Stream. So our water always feels cleaner and fresher than the west coast. The west coast is kind of like a bathtub or pond water that sits there, and that's probably why it gets a lot more red tide there compared to the east side. We always get the Gulf Stream bringing in fresh water from the Caribbean area, and you just feel that the water is fresher, crisper, and cleaner on the east side versus the west or even the Panhandle, because they share that Gulf of Mexico bath water that just sits there and for some odd reason just feels a little bit more yucky. East side has better water quality. Now let's talk about home quality. So the Panhandle of Florida, unfortunately, a lot of those homes there are made of stick, wood frame houses that we've seen to be obliterated during Hurricane Michael. None of those homes there have really been tested through major hurricanes over the years, and they're not built up to the same quality that you'll get on the lower east side, especially here in Palm Beach County, Broward, and Miami-Dade County. Those homes are going to get blown away. Get a great inspector. You don't want a home to get blown away during a hurricane, but we saw that with Hurricane Michael. We saw that during Hurricane Ivan. We got to see how these homes that are just made of wood lose their roofs, lose walls, lose windows. They're not built to the same code as South Florida built their homes. But the bright side, they are cheaper. You can get houses underneath $200 a square foot because the building quality is much cheaper. The land is cheaper in the Panhandle. You definitely get a much affordable home in the area. The West Coast is a mixture of the styles of homes. You do have a lot of wooden homes in Tampa, Florida. Remember, Tampa hasn't been hit by a major hurricane in over 100 years. So we have no idea what's going to happen to these wooden structures. The Category 5 hurricane decided to hit Tampa Bay, and that's something to think about. Yes, Tampa Bay is cheaper, but unfortunately, a lot of those wooden homes are not tested and may not fare up well compared to the concrete block homes that you have in South Florida. Again, home prices are cheaper. You have a mixture. You do have, fortunately, some concrete houses located out there. But the west coast of Florida, going back to the Panhandle, you kind of have, you have middle class, you have, unfortunately, lower class or people in poverty. And every once in a while, you have a pocket of, high income, middle class people. But the west coast, you would start getting these pockets of ultra wealthy people, especially as Naples. You have some very intense amounts of concentration of wealth that you'll start seeing on the west coast of Florida that you have not seen in the Panhandle of Florida. And this reflects in home prices, types of quality of things that you get, and just your overall environment. It's probably because it's a little bit more warm during the winter and it attracts more wealthy people, say from the Midwest and other Rust Belt states, to retire and bring their wealth down to the Tampa, Sarasota, Naples area. However, we have been seeing a lot lot more people, say New York, New Jersey, moving in, especially to around the Tampa area. So that is changing, but it's also changing the vibe of Tampa itself. But I do see Tampa more as like an Orlando. Then compared to like Sarasota and Naples, the vibes are just completely different. But as of right now, it's changing. Now, the east coast of Florida, you have Jacksonville, St. Augustine, very similar in pricing to the Panhandle of Florida. You can still get wooden frame homes. A lot of them are wooden frame homes there, unfortunately. But as you go down the east coast of Florida, things drastically get more expensive as you get more and more tropical. So take that in mind. But as you go further south, building codes get stricter and the house quality goes up drastically. And, designs. Once you get here, South Florida, we have a lot more barrel type roofs, a lot of Meisner design here in Boca Raton. Once you get to Miami, you get a special feature of front yard gates and security and bars on your windows, and a lot more security features are located in Miami. I don't really see people with gated front yards here commonly in Boca or Palm Beach County, but when you get towards the Miami area, it's going to be a lot more common to see a driveway with a gate in its front yard. This is a unique feature that I see more commonly in Miami than anywhere else in Florida. And again, on the east side, we can definitely get a lot more wealth inequality than pretty much anywhere else. You have Palm Beach County that has Palm Beach, where all the billionaires are. In the same county, we have Belgrade, one of, unfortunately, the areas that are not heavily invested in and probably needs a lot of help. Definitely do research. If you want to help an area like Belgrade, definitely reach out to see if there's anything you can do. But we have, Palm Beach itself and Belgrade in the same county, and you don't get that pretty much anywhere else in the state of Florida. The wealth inequality located here is definitely seen, especially with housing. You have housings that don't look familiar to people who live in America versus very luxurious homes here. So it changes things drastically down here. Now, talking about the age and the people in the cities, in the Panhandle, you have a lot more younger people. The average age, the median age is right around like mid-30s or so. You have a lot of people in the Navy, military. There's a lot of military bases in the Panhandle of Florida. So you have a lot more of a military town environment. The West Coast, it has a bigger hit or miss. So Tampa, median age is also in the 30s, very similar to like Central Florida and the Panhandle. But once you get to Naples, it gets to 65 years old. So Naples is a very much older environment, and you feel it. If you're not, they might consider you to be too young if you're 50. Some stores, 50 gives you senior citizen discounts. In Naples, you're still considered a youngin. East Coast is very different than the West Coast because you have, your 30-year-olds in like, Jacksonville, St. Augustine. It gets kind of older in that middle part, right around 60 years old. And then Palm Beach itself is right around 69 years old. But as you get further south, it drops down drastically as you get to Miami. Again, a lot more younger people live in Miami, enjoy the nightlife, enjoy the Miami vibes there. Now, hurricanes. If you're worried about hurricanes in these areas, Panhandle of Florida gets hit about every 2 years. So it's going to be an every other year or so event that you get hit with any type of hurricane. They're mainly go up to a category 3, but very rarely you can get a category 4 or 5 that we saw with Hurricane Michael slam into Mexico Beach and Panama City. So it is a possibility to get these larger storms, but they're not as common as other places. And with wind maps, we've seen that areas like Pensacola should expect winds up to 150 miles per hour, while like places like Destin, depending where you are, can expect 140 miles per hour. So you might want to consider your home to be, a little bit more improved and resistant to hurricanes in Pensacola than you would in Destin. So we had Hurricane Michael, category 5, hits Panama City, Mexico Beach area in 2018. We had Dennis, category 3, hit in 2005, and then you had Hurricane Ivan hit Pensacola, category 3 in 2005. The West Coast, Tampa is strangely not really hit that often with hurricanes. It's been over 100 years since it's been hit with a hurricane, and it's an area that has not been tested, has much older homes, has a lot of wooden homes, and I'd love to see what happens. Well, I wouldn't love to, but what's going to happen once they do get hit with a major hurricane. So the wind map shows that people in Tampa should expect at least 150 mile per hour winds to hit the area. Sarasota should be prepared for 160 mile per hour winds. Fort Myers, 170. And Naples, up to 180 mile per hour winds. The last hurricane to hit recently was Hurricane Ian. It did tremendous amount of damage to the area, and that was only a category 4. So what happens when a category 5 slams into the area? And you have a lot of wooden houses, especially around Tampa, as I mentioned over and over. Now, east coast of Florida, if you know anything about Jacksonville, St. Augustine, for some odd reason, that area is always always spared. I lived there during Hurricane Matthew. There's a news reporter that told us that everybody there was going to die if Hurricane Matthew hit Jacksonville.
This moves 20 miles to the west, and you and everyone you know are dead. All of you. Because you can't survive it. It's not possible unless you're very, very lucky. And your kids die too.
Again, Jacksonville was spared. St. Augustine was spared. The wind map showed that Jacksonville should expect wind up to 130 miles per hour, so way lower than Pensacola. Port St. Lucie, 160. Palm Beach County to Miami, 170. But very fortunately, a lot of homes in these areas are concrete-built homes that are made to take the effects of a major hurricane. So if you're worried about hurricanes, a lot of these homes are developed for and built to stand a hurricane hitting them. So you have, time-tested homes. Hurricane Andrew, 1992, wiped out any home that wasn't really up to code. And that changed building codes forever in South Florida. Got any specific questions? Leave them in a comment below and let me know your favorite city. And other than that, take care.